I want to be completely poured out, whether I'm in Brazil, whether I'm here at this table, whether I'm at church, wherever. I want everything to absolutely flow through me. I don't want it to be about me. We talked about selfie sticks yesterday. I want nothing focusing. In fact, if nobody ever knew my name while I was doing this, you know this for a fact, I would be 100% fine with that. I want everything pouring through me, coming back to a church. I want it, whether it's our church here, whether it's in Sao Paulo, whether it's Bahamas. I could get a passport taken from me tomorrow. I could never go back. I want the ripple effect that comes through me to be poured out through every community and coming back to God. That's the only way I want it.
What's going on, Post Sunday podcasters? As you can already tell, I'm in the captain's seat, which means it is a different day, a different hour. We are here today live with all of those on Instagram and X. The rest of you will be catching this on demand, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube later this week. But whenever I'm in the chair, that means it's a different day and a different story and a different opportunity. So as the guy that usually sits in this chair says, I am not alone. I'm not alone either today. I'm here today because I have some very special guests. First of all, I've got a special guest in the studio that has never been in here before. And I invited them in here today specifically so that you can not only hear their story, but that hopefully you can be inspired by what God has done in them and through them and realize that God can do the same thing in you. And so in the podcast studio today, for the very first time, one of the charter members of Genesis Church, that's the language we're going to use, Tamara Clancy is here with us today. How are you, Tamara?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
Can you believe you're a charter member?
No, I can't. It doesn't seem like.
Does that sound weird?
It sounds really weird.
It sounds old school church too.
Well, and it makes us feel really old.
Yeah, this church is only about 16 years old. But for those that do not know, that are unaware, Tamara has been with us since the very first day that Genesis began. And I'm forgetting. All I remember is the email that came through. But how you actually found out about us.
Yes.
Yeah. How was it that you came to know who we were or what we were about?
We were just looking for a church in the area, and we found out you were starting church, and so I emailed you and said, "Tell me about you. Tell me everything about this church." And you said, "We're just starting it. There's really not much to tell you yet." But come on.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so that's how it began, and you're going to hear a little bit more about why she is in this seat today, which makes it extra special just because of the history we now have, but also the content that we're talking about today. So if you are new, checking in, or you're with us, you would know that we're in the letters that built the church, and we are in our second to last letter for the year. And that is the letter Philippians that Paul has written. Today we're in Philippians chapter 2. And as we always tell you, this podcast has become a resource of discipleship. It's an opportunity for you to take the content, the conversations, the things that we are looking at in Scripture, and then use it as you study God's Word to help you better understand it. And so we do want to go deeper, but we also want to make it as practical as possible. That's the beautiful thing about today. I don't think there is a more practical chapter in many of Paul's letters than this one right here, and that is why. But Tamara is not the only guest in the studio. Today we are bringing the trifecta, and what I realize is this. I have not been in the studio with this person since, I believe, the first month this podcast ever launched, almost 3 years ago. So welcome to the podcast studio, my compadre, my right-hand man, my ride or die, Pastor Chad Harper.
I'm back.
He's back.
That's all I got to say. I'm back.
And we're at the table together today.
Together forever.
And we haven't done this yet.
No, we haven't.
So the very last time we were at this table together, we were on that side. Johnny was on this side.
And I think, didn't we do it one time with Tad too? With
yes,
your brother?
Yep.
That was my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I boycotted after that for a while just because I wanted Tad back.
You boycotted, but we also banned him.
Yeah.
And many of our listeners are like, Chad's been banned. Can you release the ban and bring him back?
I will say you can't ban someone that's boycotting. It doesn't work that way. Tamara's in the corporate world. She understands
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, can't fire somebody that quit.
So here's the great part about having you both in the studio today. That is, I have spent years, and now I can actually say decades plus, which makes me sound even older. Decades in ministry with you and as my closest friend.
Yep.
Traveling the world together.
Yep.
And now over a decade traveling with you to Brazil. And so I just preface that today so that everyone knows why they're in the studio and why they're on this podcast, but also because of what we're going to look at in Philippians today. And yesterday, if you were at Genesis Church, and for some, this is an extension of what takes place on Sunday at Genesis Church Orlando. Chad, you spoke did a great job from Philippians, and just kind of brought us into chapter 2 from chapter 1, this short letter. It's 4 chapters long that we're just punching out chapter by chapter over the next few weeks. And you just kind of set the stage yesterday with a story you have come to me about recently, because the gentleman was just at your house, the gentleman we both know, we grew up knowing.
Sure.
And I think that really just set the tone for the letter, but also could set the tone for today and kind of just recap that story.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, I had a guy that has just been a family friend for years in my home. So his name's Pastor Dwayne Carson, great man of God. So I've known him for, I don't know, I think maybe at least 25, probably 30, 35 years since college. And I think even before college. So, but anyway, so he was telling a story in my home using his hands as pastors do, noticed a ring on his finger. And when he finished talking, I asked him about the ring, and the ring simply has 2 words. It has his last name, Carson. But it had the word others. And the story behind the ring was his father-in-law, great man of God, unbelievably generous man. He had a sign that Dwayne saw when he first started dating his wife that was hanging above the door, and it simply says others. No other word on it, no Bible reference, nothing, just others. And so the reason why is because he wanted his family to see that. The last thing they saw before they walked outside was that word others, and realizing that in order to live the life God wants you to live, you have to have it with others in mind. And so when you do that, when you live that way, when you focus on others, you begin to accomplish what God's wanted you to do. So started the day yesterday with that story. Great story, impactful story, and I really think that set the tone for what was initially Mission Sunday. So that's
I loved obviously the ring, but I like the sign over the door engraved in wood, that they had of others that you were able to visibly see. And I want us to start there today, because that in essence is this whole letter. And if those that are listening today live, feel free to check in on live, but also to comment, ask questions along the way, as we always invite you to do on Instagram Live and X. But the theme of this letter really allows us to do what we purposed this year for. This year's purpose was not just the letters that built the church then, but how does that build us now? And now as we're rounding out the year, it becomes a lot more applicable. It's practical. It's not that we don't want to understand some deep theology. We want to ask ourselves now, with all that we have learned and all that we have understood, how are we actually doing this? Because at the end of the day, this is not supposed to stay in our head. This is supposed to be in our hearts, which ultimately affect what we do with our hands and feet. And you guys at this table, you live that, you believe that. Tamara, you got the opportunity yesterday to share just briefly at the end of the service. And there was a moment where, even sitting there, I was amazed when I heard it, and then I was jealous, because you said, I've been on 30 trips to Brazil with you guys. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I haven't been on 30 trips yet. But I just thought that was amazing, because there has obviously been something in you that has not just triggered your understanding of living this out, but has drawn you back time and time again. Just kind of talk about being here at Genesis and getting that understanding to just go and then never cease going.
Right. Well, everything that I've learned from Genesis from day one was you go. It was community. It was outreach outside of the 4 walls, because we never had 4 walls to begin with. So we were always driven out there. And when you invited me on that first trip, I had no idea. I thought it was going to be just a vacation, a week away from my email, if I'm going to be honest. And there was something about it that the community on, internal with our people traveling, the community there, it just drew me to it. And I remember thinking on that first trip, I am not qualified for this. There's no way I should be here doing this. And then I remember thinking, but now that I've seen it, I can never unsee it. There's no stopping for me. I mean, 30 trips is great, but I can't imagine going, great, I've got 30 trips under me. Somebody else take this.
No, what I do is I say, Tamara's got 30 trips. Keep going. There's so much to talk about today, and even your experiences in Brazil that no one has ever heard. And that's one of the reasons I have you here today, because I have watched it firsthand. I know what you're doing. I know some of the things you've done. You probably don't want to share all of those in a good way, out of humility. But I think that it can really challenge somebody else to take that step forward today, and that's what it's really all about. If you have your Bibles, you're with us. Here's the cool part. Johnny was on a Zoom just about a week and a half ago with a men's group from New York that are using the podcast, and they asked him to Zoom in. We have a women's group in our church that is going through the book of Philippians this year, and so there's another women's group in South Carolina that are using this as a resource, and so we want to make sure that we open that letter today, and then we show you some practicality in our own lives as to how we've understood that. But Paul opens up the letter in verse 1. He says it this way. He says, so if there's any encouragement in Christ, he's writing to this letter, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit. So he's using encouragement, comfort, but then I love that he uses participation, because that word rings in all of us. Any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. And, that is something that as we lead Genesis together, that word I just used, together, is really the banner. It's trying to figure out how to get people to be of the same mind, of the same love, and of full accord with one mind. And everybody going in the right direction in a church that has every church denomination, people with no church background, different ethnicities, and going, some of the things we talked about. There's disputable matters, non-disputable, but what's the mission, and how do we keep everybody focused in one direction?
Yeah, I think where a lot of people get it wrong is unity is not always agreement, right? You don't have to agree about every aspect of life to be unified. Unity is alignment, right? And it's aligning behind something. And so I think that's what we do so well, because we have so many different, like you said, church backgrounds and people and denominational backgrounds that come in, but yet we're focused, we're aligned on the mission of Christ, the mission of God, what we're trying to do. And one of my best friends, I'm not going to say his name, but he's literally become a mission travel buddy of mine. We could not be farther apart on certain areas of our life, but they don't really truly matter, right? And at the end of the day, it's the alignment that matters. It's not the agreement about everything. And I think that's what Paul's saying here. It's like you've got to be aligned with those things that matter. And what he mentions in those verses, those are the things that matter, and that's what gives you the one mind. So don't keep adding to it. Look what he says in those, and that's where the alignment comes. That's what I think leading Genesis has done so well.
Yeah. Here at Genesis, we're partnered with Brazil, Scotland, Bahamas, South Korea, and Brazil. And Chad and I used to be former youth pastors. And one of the things I realized right away, Tamara, on our very first trip to Brazil, there is a drastic difference in taking students on a missions trip and adults. And as Chad said, keeping everybody in alignment with one mind and one purpose is 10 times harder with adults than it is students. Students, you can just be like, because I said so, we're going this direction. Adults, totally different story. Right. They want to do their own thing. They have their own plan. And so when we get into these environments, getting everybody to be unified is actually one of the greater struggles. It's not where we are. It's not what we're eating. It's not where we're sleeping. It's not none of that. It's not the travel. It's getting everybody to stay on the same page. Speak from your experiences of that, because you were on the very first trip where everything pretty much went off the rails before we were able to figure out how to really get the ship going in the right direction in Brazil.
Yeah, so that first trip was special, and I think none of us will ever forget that trip. and it's where we learn to create the format for future trips. It is harder with adults. Everyone's got different personalities, and everyone's got different strengths too, which is what I like about bringing us all together. As long as we're rowing the same way, as long as we're down there going, we are going to bring the news of Jesus down here, then I can work with any personality, any strength, and I think that's what makes a team.
Yeah, with grown adults, you have them all, well, I'm okay to do this. I'm okay to do that. I'd like to be here. For those that would love to know more details on that very first trip, anonymously, although they wouldn't probably mind if I told their name. We had a couple that came down like third night in the trip. True story. We're all getting ready to have like our evening devotion time.
Yes.
And they are decked to the nine. They are just lavishly dressed, and everybody's looking like, what's up? And they're ready to go out on the town. And they're ready to go out on the town.
Yes.
And all of a sudden I'm going, you can't do that. We're on a missions trip. Like, I got to address this. We're going to have team devotional, and they want to go out and experience the nightlife of Brazil. And now I'm trying to reel them in, and I'm going, I wouldn't have to deal with students like this. Right. I would just, tell them you're in timeout and go to your room. But when Paul writes this letter to the church, as we joke about that first trip, there's a greater, struggle there. Trying to keep a bunch of people, families, parents, children, all in the same direction as we've talked through the last few letters, because different people have different convictions. Different people have different interpretations to say, hey, we're going to look at the main thing and keep the main thing in place. And so Paul does that. He goes, okay, I don't just want you to have one mind and I want you to be of one heart and going in the same direction. I'm going to tell you what it's going to look like. And so in verse 3, he says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Look, each of you not only to his own interests, but also to the interests, and there's that word you were talking about in the early story, others. And that is mission focused right there. How do you get people that align their lives with Jesus to now begin to realize it truly isn't about me? Chad and I grew up with a youth pastor that drilled into us as students. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's all about him. And he would say that all the time to us. And so when we repeat it, we didn't come up with that statement. I don't know where he got that statement from, but it was discipled into us. And now we see these scriptures differently because of it.
Yeah, I think the core of it is you can't reach people you don't value, right? And so a lot of people, they place a lot of value on things that truly don't matter. And when you put value on people, now I can start to reach those people. But you reach people you value. That's why we do what we do as far as mission, with all of our church partners, all of our mission trips. They're people like that lead them that we value. I think of every single leader of the church. You think of Paul and Angela, a friendship that we value, you know what I mean? And so we value them. Therefore, we value what they value. And so Scotland is something that for them, it's heavy on their heart. You hear it, you see it. That's why we want to be a part of that, because we value Paul and Angela. Therefore, we value what they do. Now we can help reach the people. Same thing with, Pastor Andy Timms in Germany. Same way, we value him. We value that friendship. Pastor Mozart in Brazil, you go, Tamara, because you value him. You love him. He's your friend. And it's like going home a little bit. That's why you go back. So I think with Richard in the Bahamas, with James in South Korea, all those, we value them. Therefore, what is important to them becomes important to us. And that's where the others comes into play. We never start, when you started this, we never even talked about doing it together. 7 years ago when I come on, think about where we were, think about what we're doing now. Yep. We didn't strive for anything except we value people. Yeah. So wherever that is, whoever that is, at whatever point that is, we're just going to reach them because that's what we value them. And I think that's where the other focus is, what do you value, So.
When people hear this and you hear who we're partnered with, the struggle becomes a lot of other people have places that need partnerships. And I think that's the hardest part for us because we don't have unlimited resources. So we're trying to align ourselves in places where we can be very strategic. And when I say very strategic, biblically strategic, How can we biblically live out what we're reading right here in Philippians? And if we can't do that in that community or in that space, and we can't do it for a long amount of time, and we can't do it with people that we feel we are one with in our heart, in our mind, and mission. You know, when we went to Brazil, that was a thing. This place has the same heart that we do. Just in this little small town, it is kids, it is sports outreach, it is whatever it takes. It is outside the walls of the church. We will feed people under a bridge if we have to. And when you do that, you go, hey, we want to do this, but to put others' interests above our own and not make it about ourselves, we got to keep coming back. This is going to be long term. And you and I realized that real quick, that they had other groups that were coming that I don't want to hear today bash, but from their words, they felt like it was their interest, and they were praying for someone that would come in and come alongside of what they needed to do as a church. Talk about kind of that understanding of our partnership there.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes our trips unique, is that we are completely ingrained in the church. You're right, they had other groups that came in, and they would come in, and again, not bashing them, but they would come in, bust themselves in for the day, do a little bit of work in the community, and then take themselves back out. It was more of an us and them situation. And I don't think that was intentional on their part. I just don't think they had done the work there yet to understand all of the stories.
That's good.
You know, and Chad, when you say it's all about others, when somebody comes with me to Brazil, I sit there and I want to talk to them. It's almost like I'm in the back of their ear just saying, hey, let me tell you about this person. It's not just a person standing here, but this person has an entire story behind them. And I think that's where we do it differently, is we stop, and we've been able to do that for this many years, to hear all of the stories.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with Bahamas. Like when I hear her say that, is you've taken me there now, but you've been there for quite some time. I want you to talk about that. And when you tell me what it took to put this camp together, I'm honest. I'm like, dear God, no. I don't want to come over on a ferry with wooden supplies from Home Depot and go down and push brush and build for years, because until we get it done, they can't even begin a camp. But you've been a part of it, and that is putting others above yourself, even in Bahamas.
Yeah. I think so. I've been going down to Camp Bahamas with Richard and Andrea Aubrey. I mean, I've known Richard for 40 plus years. He's known me basically my whole life. But we've been going down serving there for 20 plus years, Michelle and I, and obviously Genesis has been apart for the last 7 years. Richard, and not to make the story extremely long, but obviously your connection with Richard, your dad, Richard worked for your dad in ministry, very first internship. So it's that, we value what he values, right? So when I look at that and I look at what we did at Camp Bahamas, I look at the building that has taken place, how to get supplies there from a little teeny island. They don't have a Home Depot or a Lowe's. So we bought it in Fort Lauderdale, had to pay to get it shipped there. And then oftentimes a lot of it was stolen at the port and all these things. You go down there, and I guess my whole thing with the Bahamas, and I mean, even, Brazil, just all the churches, you have to transition from how does this help me to how do I can serve them. Right. So, because if you go and again, not to bash the groups that come in, but it's when people do missions that way, it's how does this help me? Even though, I'm technically helping them, it's like, this makes me feel really good. I go in and I pat myself, look at all the things. And it's like, we're here for, like I said yesterday, the self-promotion. We're here for the picture. We're here for the selfie. We're here for well, that's not truly serving. And I think when you go to the mentality is, okay, what do they need? How can I serve them? Not how would I do it in America, but how would I serve them? When we met with, Pastor Johannes, one of a pillar there in Europe, he, I'll never forget the conversation. He didn't want to meet with us. And it was like, well, hold on, why don't you want to meet with us? We're cool people, And he said, no, because Americans just come over and they think that they know their best way and they know all that. And they always want something. And then after that meeting that we had with him for hours, Kobe was there. He prayed over all of us, spoke into all of us. Just an amazing moment. He said through, his son, Johannes, he told us, he said, it's amazing because y'all are here to serve us. You're not here to fix us. You know what I'm saying? You're literally, you care about serving us. And he was blown away because unfortunately, most Americans don't think that way. Yep. And that to me is what's important about Brazil, Bahamas, all the church partnerships. How can we help? Not how does this help me?
Our inclination, our human nature, pride, ego, it's always there. You're always going to fight it. It's been there since the beginning of time, but is to let the scriptures push you forward into places you don't necessarily always want to take yourself, and remind yourself this has to be about others. And to be about others, I have to be willing to do things that are uncomfortable, that are just not natural to me all the time, that I have to be willing to listen first. I've told people, I said, one of my trips to Africa changed my life. It's Africa. It's just different level, third world. I would say Brazil for us kind of gets people in that setting, in that extreme poverty. But when you're coming with the gospel, we're coming with the Jesus film, and we sit with the leader of a village, and he tells us, he says, they will not listen to your gospel until they have clean drinking water. And all of a sudden you're just like, wait, what? He's like, you can try to share it, but they're in survival mode. Today, their greatest need is water. And if you could meet that need, you would have an audience. And so now you go back, and the strategy became, we will drill wells, and where we drill wells, we will build the church right beside the well, so that when they come for truly drinking water, they will listen to the living water of God. And that wasn't like, oh, look at what we did. That was from the mouth of the people that lived there. And we've had to learn that in these countries. Paul says this next, and I think this leans into all of these experiences we've had. He says, have this in mind, verse 5, among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped. Now, this verse right here, we could go very deep theologically, but I think there's some practicality in our conversation today. Verse 7, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And so, as we quote often N.T. Wright, this is what he says about this. He says, when Paul says Jesus was in the form of God, he was claiming Jesus fully shares God's identity, but Jesus also fully reveals what God was like. He said, Jesus doesn't stop being God to wash feet and die. Jesus showed up to show us what God always would be like. The reality is, and the scandal he uses, is that Christians still find it hard to believe in a God that will look like this, a God that would empty himself and serve other people. And when we go to these spaces and these places, and we could say right here in our own city, down the Straight Street, or we have a foster care ministry, whenever we get out and we serve, we are trying to be like Christ, empty ourselves in these spaces, correct?
That's correct. And I really love what you said, Chad. You have to go down there before you empty yourself. You have to go down there and listen. That's been one of the most important things with me about Brazil, and I know with you with Bahamas, is I need to hear what you need first so that you can hear me clearly. And then I can pour myself completely into you, which is what I do down there.
I think one of the things is, and I love how you said yesterday, Tamara, the spreadsheets have spreadsheets. That's my tendency, right? So
I don't have any.
I'm not gonna bash my best friend sitting across the table about strategy and structure, but he has it in him. He just doesn't pull it out much, so that's what I'm here for. But a lot of times what happens is people go in with a strategy and not a posture. And what I think Jesus sets here is it's posture before strategy. And that's what, like you said with the wells, Tim, you have a well, then a church. If you're not careful, you'll go in with the strategy of, but we have the film now, so we're just going to share and they're like, no, the posture first, So it's strategy is important, but it's posture and it's listening. What do the people need? What is my posture here? And then based off of what you hear, and that's so important. And then, okay, let's build our strategy after our posture. And Americans, unfortunately, a lot of us, unfortunately, we're wired the opposite. No, I have this system. I have this structure. I have this strategy. It will work. And then no, you have to start posture first, strategy second. And I think that's what Jesus does there.
And we deal with that, just even in the church. As we're looking at the letters that built it, all of us have to take that inward, journey of conviction with the Holy Spirit. Where do I struggle? Where do I align with this? Where's my humility? Where's my ego? When does it show? When does it not? Because we will often have people that come to Genesis and they immediately tell us all the things they do. I do this. I did this. In my old church, I did this. Before we even know who they are. And it's all about what they did instead of a posture of what needs to be done, right? That's the difference. What needs to be done so that we can reach more people. And I often tell people, will say like, well, where should I serve? And I just say, find the greatest need. Eventually move into your sweet spot. Eventually move into the thing that really just gets that engine going inside of you. But first, like, where's the greatest need? If the greatest need is straightening chairs and putting them together because we actually need seats, I'm here. If the greatest need is putting out signs so that first-time guests can figure out how to get on the place, I'm here. Not until you give me the platform or you give me the microphone or you allow me to be heard, then I don't have anything to give. And so it happens right here in the body of Christ, but it also has to happen where we go in those spaces.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between, missionally speaking and serving speaking here. Don't show up strong, show up surrendered. Don't show up and tell me how much you do. That's showing up strong. Look at me. No, show up surrendered. And I think when you show up surrendered, that's when you really configure and see the need. And that's what I think we do well, in all of our church partnerships and mission partnerships, is we show up surrendered. The need is different, And I know, Tamara, you can go in, and I don't want to, blow the lid off the thing, but like you could go in and talk about, you show up surrendered to Brazil, and, we've been able to do vans, we've been able to do building projects, we've been able, you know what I'm saying? Not because you go down and say, oh, this is what needs to happen. You go down surrendered and say, okay, this is what needs to be done. I see that because I'm listening, and the needs that you've been able to meet, personally and, through friends and through churches and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think that's something that needs to be shared a little bit.
Yeah, she won't like that moment. But,
I know.
Do this.
I broke it, not you.
That's okay. I know we were getting there. So share a little bit about just the community transformation of the longevity of, 14 years into this town, this village that just sits in the edge of nowhere and backs up to the favelas, which we've always been kind of just taken back because that's extreme impoverished area. And many of the Brazilians that there come and join us have never gone into those favelas themselves. Right. And yet, so by being there, it's going, okay, we want to see change in this town, and that is taking place.
And we have seen huge change there over the years. And I was able this last trip to kind of sit back with Caden leading the group. It allowed me to sit back with the leadership and just look around the area and go, oh my goodness, I saw it last trip, and then I really saw it this last trip of all the change. We went from a tiny little town with a favela, with trash piles that we would climb over. I won't even tell you what was in those piles besides the dead bodies that we climbed over.
Exactly.
But we went from that to all of a sudden we were doing church under the bridge because we moved the trash pile over and we were having it there. And then because of that transformation, we watched houses being built in that area. And then, so I thought that was amazing. We had houses where there was a trash pile. That's huge just on its own. And then from those houses being torn down by the government because they're basically squatter houses to being removed, which was really hard for me to see because on that one time I couldn't see that was transformation. I saw that as a step back to the next trip going out there, and there's a road. There's a sidewalk there. That's huge. And to this last one of me being able to sit back and look at the church leadership saying, you have a plan now. You look comfortable. You look at peace with this.
Yeah. For those that don't know, just as we say here at Genesis Church, 4 walls don't define us. The church in Brazil, the church in Germany, everywhere we go, they have to live that type of understanding. In America, we're trying to get people to that understanding. And I've talked to my own personal struggles of saying that statement, but having my own feelings inside sometimes differently. But what it does is it keeps us aligned, one mind, one mission, no matter the space. It's not, that is just the training, as we learned in Ephesians, the equipping grounds to go out. It's no different in Brazil. But it's amazing because what we went out and did And because of what the government came in and tried to pull back, not against us, just against their own, systems and structures, now the church gets a grant from the mayor.
Right.
And all those people that have been displaced come and line up outside the church for meals every single day. Right. And their kids are in the ministries that we get to help sponsor and send money towards. And so it's kind of been like this full evolving of, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to continue to stay on mission, but somehow God has pulled them all to the church.
Yes, yes.
And it's been sitting there all along, and now it's shining bright.
Yes.
And in the next verse, I think, and this is where I want to get you to kind of tell a personal story that I think for everyone listening today is not only inspiring, it can be very challenging to you to say, hey, I could do this. I could be this type of person. And so he says in verse 14, he says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. So he's talking to the church. He's already talked about unity. Now he's saying, don't grumble, don't dispute, don't get caught up in all that nonsense, so that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish. Why does he want them unified? And why does he want them not to be grumbling and disputing against each other? Because in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, they can shine as lights in the world. And, deep dive thought for a moment. Here's Paul. He's talking to the new Israel, and Israel knows the covenant of Abraham. God told Abraham, I will make your descendants as many as the stars in the sky. Paul comes back and he says, shine bright like the lights. Mm-hmm. The same stars you know in your story, the same stars at night that shine through that darkness. That's the type of people you're supposed to be. That's what the church is really all about. And I forget how many years ago, so you can give all the details. But I will preface the story this way. We're at the church. Church leadership comes in. They tell us they need our attention right away. There is a guy who is being chased down by drug lords. And if he does not pay what he owes them, they are coming to take his life. Mm-hmm. And so we end up in the house with this gentleman who's in pure fear. He's hiding in that house right there. So we don't know if we walk out on the street, what could be waiting.
Yes.
And we are ministering to this man and his family who are just complete chaos. And there's a little boy sitting in the corner watching. And I'll leave the story there.
Okay.
And you tell the fullness of it thereafter.
Okay. That story happened about 8 years ago. And I remember, you're right, we walked up that hill to that house not knowing what was going on. It felt a little unsafe, I would admit. And I remember listening to this man, and it was a good thing I couldn't speak Portuguese and really say what was on my mind, because I remember listening to this man ask us for help to get him out of the situation. And I remember my mind kept thinking, you're not ready to get out of this situation. You just need help to, like, an immediate fix. And I looked over, and the boy sitting in the corner happened to be one of our first kids who was in our Capoeira program from 2012. Somebody that my family sponsored, somebody that I just connected with, loved him, and I lost him for a few years. He was in the church forever, and I lost him. And I looked over, and that man was telling us how he needed money to get into a recovery program and to pay the drug lords back. And I looked, and this kid was sitting in the corner. I thought, oh my goodness, you're back. And then there was a rage inside of me, was like, this man who is getting this, needs us to pay for his rehab, is going to affect, in a cyclical pattern, every kid that's in this room. There was that little boy sitting on the couch or in the corner, and then there was a set of twins, which were his siblings, sitting on there. And I thought, you have put everybody in this room in danger because of your sin, and which I don't think you're ready to take care of yet. So my focus turned from this man that was in front of us, who we ultimately put in rehab, and he's been in and out a couple times, to this kid was, I'm not letting go of you. I found you again. We're gonna break this cycle.
And so you find this kid, and then you bring him back into the church.
I do. And
you spend the next few years just loving on him.
Yes.
Just tell a little bit of that. I know that you don't like to, but share some of that.
I love that you know all my stories and you know which points right to zing in on. So he had been out of the church. Some sin on his own left him feeling like he couldn't go into the church anymore. And I thought, oh, no, we all sin. We all walk in that door with some baggage. You're still going to walk in there with that. So today I keep track of him every day. He and I talk almost every day and counsel him. We've got him through school. We've got him employed. He is in the church. And just recently, I don't know if you know this, he is hosting the youth group every Friday night at his house.
So little details that you're skipping through really fast, because I know that you do not like the spotlight, and you're not here for spotlight.
Right.
We want to stay in check with this humility. I have you here because I want people to hear the personal story of someone that just walked into a church they didn't know about, said yes to an initial trip. 30 trips later, you have personally taken this young boy that was in this house where if the drug lords came into that house that night,
he would have been gone.
What could have happened in the moment. And you have personally, out of your own finances, out of your own time, not just kept up with him, but you have put him through school.
Yes.
You have helped pay for his rent.
Yes.
The kid who didn't feel like he could be at church whenever our group showed up was in the church from morning till night. And now you're starting to see a return on, you just said, 8+ years of putting the interest of someone else above your own, who isn't fully there yet. We both know that piece.
Right.
But he's seeing you shine as a light in the midst of a crooked, twisted generation. And we know that town. And we know that environment, and we know it's crooked and twisted, and we know they want to snatch the kids off the streets, and we know what they want to put them in and how they want to use them and how they want to sell them and all these things that go on. And you say, I'll keep going back, and I might just keep going back. And at the end of this 50 trips in, it might have been for this one story. And that mission, that focus in you could change a life.
Right. And that goes to our story of coming in with your own plan versus coming in and hearing the needs of those and what they need. This kid needed somebody solid to come alongside of him. It needed someone to tweak his ear and get him back in church no matter what. It needed somebody to teach him budgeting and life skills, and somebody to not just create a dependency on me, but to teach him how to get to the next level. We're about halfway through that.
Yeah. Maybe.
You
know, I would say, Chad, conversations just coming off Germany, you know, we've heard them say they look at the church, the Germans, as almost like a cult, because specifically the one that we're attached to doesn't fall in line with their traditional church ideas, these ancient church structures. They remodeled an old car dealership, and Andy and the leadership there have come along and said, we want our church to shine as a light differently to people because of the perception they have of what this is about. And we're seeing that played out in those people.
Yeah, I think Germany, I think Scotland, Bahamas, Brazil. I mean, I think Tamara is an example of, you know, the world doesn't need louder Christians. They just need brighter Christians, you know. And I think that's what Germany's doing so well, is they're just shining bright in that community, you know. And that's the thing with Pastor Andy and Gino and Zuzi, the team there. I mean, even the leadership team, you know, with Zoran and all those guys, what they do is they just shine bright. That's their agenda, is to shine bright. And when we do that Kids Fest that we just did, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of families come in. You know, many of the families that come in, you know, they're not Christians. They're not. I mean, they come in across the street directly, and I know you've seen it, but across the street directly, they built these brand new apartments, and the majority of them are immigrants, you know, and the majority of them are of the Muslim faith, and that's what they are. But they come in and they can't believe that they're accepted into this church, and these kids are loved into this church. And I mean, it's mind-boggling, but it's because that's what we're called to be. Is we're called to be the light, not to be loud. You know, and I think sometimes you get they get mixed up.
Yeah, that's really good, because I was talking with Zoran, one of our friends in Germany, and he was telling me I just thought a really neat story from when last year you guys went and you did the Kids Fest, and one of these Muslim boys came in, and he kept coming back. And so Zoran told me, here we are. It's about 2 months later. He said, and right towards the end of the year, he said, I always challenge the students that I work with. He said, to find your verse and then be able to say it and then give God a prayer off of it. It's just something he does working with students. He said, so I do this. No students come forward. No students. He said, it's the first time I've ever done it. And he goes, usually some kids, like, they're excited. He goes, some get emotional. He goes, it's just a big kind of end of the year moment. He said, no kids did it. He said, and to my shock, this Muslim boy comes forward, says, hey, I found a verse I like. He goes, I don't even know if he believes in Jesus yet, but he reads the verse and says, my prayer would be this. And he said, all of a sudden now all the other kids start pinging off of that. And he said, it was just this moment that I'm looking going, that kid would have never been here had we not done that festival when you guys showed up. He said, now that kid's parents have started coming with them. I don't know where they are. He said, but it's been crazy to watch this kid who only came through because of candy at an event now being here. And he opened up the Bible and read a verse when no one else was willing to do it. Blows my mind. And he says, that's the difference we're seeing in these places.
Let's take it stateside for a minute with Tim, who, Dan Allen, who, what's his name? Kyle, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a in Genesis Church moment where, I don't know if y'all have talked about it on the podcast or not, but, a kid comes, he came Easter first Sunday, a couple weeks later gets saved, and literally just fast forward, it's the first Christian kid in his entire family. And every time he comes, I saw him yesterday, every time he comes with people, just bringing people, and that's a prime example of right here in our own backyard. So a lot of times, I mentioned it yesterday, Tamara talked about it at the end of, what she was sharing, you don't need a passport, you're not doing it a week away. You're not doing it for a stamp. There's a neighbor that you might know. There's a person at school that you might know. There's people right here in our own town that need us to be light. It's not just, I'm going to go shine bright in a different country. I'm going to go shine bright here. No, start shining bright here, right? And Kyle is a walking example of that. And now this kid, I don't know if I've ever heard him say many words, but Dan sent us a picture, was it 2 weeks ago? Where last week, he's discipling someone at our picnic tables after the service.
So for clarification, he led them to Christ at the table last week. So he's been baptized, brought his family who's Hindu in. Now he's bringing friends and leading them to Christ on campus outside when church is over.
Yeah, he brings them to the service and then follows up, right? Yeah. Seals the deal and then is like, well, I'll walk you through what this truly means, which, and again, Dan Allen, not a very loud guy at all, but a very bright guy, right? As far as he just shines so bright. That's what Dan did to him. So he's modeling what was done for him. So he knows no better. Meaning this is what you do. You bring people to church, you give them the opportunity here, you seal the deal, and then you explain it to them, you walk them through it. So right here, and that's where I know, and my focus yesterday was, making sure that mission it's a lifestyle. It's not a trip, right? And you can get into, we encourage you, and Tamara did yesterday too. I want everybody to go on every trip we ever take. The Hill family, Casey and Kara, I think they've been everywhere. Literally, they've been everywhere, True. Right? And I just met this morning before we came in here with Christina, one of our, great friends from Germany who brings kids over and partners with the school, Family Christian. The Hills and her family have become some of the best friends. Jason Van Camp got a text yesterday. The host family that takes him in for the last 3 years in Germany just booked tickets, and they want to see Genesis firsthand. And so they're going to come and they're going to spend Easter with us. Wow. So March 30th through April 6th, they're going to be with us. Their daughter, Cheyenne, is doing everything she can to shift her semester abroad from Canada, not sure why you'd go there, it's cold, to Orlando so that she can live with them. Wow. And so it's just, it's being bright, not being loud. And none of the people I just mentioned are loud, right? So they're just bright. That's all they do. And that's what being the light of the world means.
We'll be clear about this. We said it last week. We fail if we try to build our own castle.
That's right.
So to build the kingdom, everybody has to understand the kingdom's way bigger than Genesis Church. And it's way bigger than me and Chad and Johnny. And you, Tamara. So we may not have the resources to be a part of all the other great things being done for the kingdom. But there's people at our church. There's people that are online live with us. There's people that do missions and they do other work. And we want to just put hands in hands and go, hey, meet this person and go with them. You may not be able to go where we go. The world is big. The world needs Jesus. And I think that's ultimately the letters that built the church. Paul has been in every letter trying to get all the believers to understand there's one mission. It's the gospel to the world. That is it. It is the gospel to the world. And if you don't have a passion for that, that doesn't mean you have to get on a plane. But if you don't have a desire to see people in this world come to Jesus, you got to go back and reread, and you got to recheck your own heart and your own mind, because that should be what's building up inside of you when you see life change, when you hear these stories. And I think the encompassing moment, and speaking to this as I read it, for everybody, it's deeply theological, it's extremely practical, and it is highly against our nature. Paul says in verse 17, even if I am to be poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrifice of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. He says, if my life exists to be poured out as a sacrifice for your faith, I rejoice in that. And we live in a culture and a society in America, Western thinking, where we're so busy, we're already so empty, we got nothing left to pour out. Mm-hmm. And we have all understood it's no different than when a parent says, I got nothing left in my schedule, then their kid joins a team. And all of a sudden, they got enough time in their schedule for practice every night and games on Saturday. But they didn't have that before they signed up. But we will use that as the body of Christ. I don't have time to pour myself out for the body of Christ. I don't have time to get on a plane and go to another country. I don't have time in my own city to put this out. But Paul says, hey, you need to understand this. Our life is going to be constantly poured out for Jesus. And this is what we're understanding. This is what you've been understanding in 30 trips, 14 years to Brazil.
I want to be completely poured out, whether I'm in Brazil, whether I'm here at this table, whether I'm at church, wherever. I want everything to absolutely flow through me. I don't want it to be about me. We talked about selfie sticks yesterday. I want nothing focusing. In fact, if nobody ever knew my name while I was doing this, you know this for a fact, I would be 100% fine with that. I want everything pouring through me, coming back to a church. I want it, whether it's our church here, whether it's in Sao Paulo, whether it's the Bahamas. I could get a passport taken from me tomorrow. I could never go back. I want the ripple effect that comes through me to be poured out through every community and coming back to God. That's the only way I want it.
I'll say this and I'll have you speak in. But you surrounded yourself with people too.
Yes.
Obviously, we have, a relationship, close relationships here at Genesis. People that have gone to Brazil with you that you continue to go with, but you were telling me even in your workforce,
yes,
you work for someone who has told you this is how I want to end my life.
Yes.
Kind of just speak that for a moment.
Yes. I've had the pleasure of working with a man of deep faith for 25 years. So I surround it, Sundays you see me, Brazil you see me, but Monday through Saturday, I have got this man just pouring into my ears who has taught me how to live outwardly no matter what I do. If I'm passing out a paper to somebody at work, I'm living through God. They're going to hear about Jesus through me because of that, and I've been told that way. His goal is to just pour himself out completely, and he's taught me to echo that.
You had said he wants to end his life at net zero.
Yes.
Which I think is an incredible statement to hear from somebody. At the end of the day, all that I've achieved, all that I've gained, all that I have, I want it back to the kingdom because I'm not taking it with me.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. We've learned this, but we got to figure out how to walk it out sometimes.
Yeah, I'll say this. And, I always have these things that come in my brain because I'm different and weird. But I think people get confused between used up and poured out.
That's good.
So nobody wants to be used. And so I think when they hear this, if they're not careful, they put it in the used up. And it's like if I had a glass of water sitting on this table, if I leave it there long enough, it's going to evaporate. That's just how, and again, I'm not smart, but chemistry, right? Chemistry works. Is that how that is? So it just leaves, but it does no good to nobody, but if I drink it, you know what I'm saying? If I pour you some, and then my cup gets empty, at least that's being poured out. It's when you use what you have, emptying yourself out. And I think that's where a lot of people, they misconstrue, I don't have the time, or it's something else to do. No, that's used. And I don't want to be used. I want to be poured out, but if you're not careful, if you don't actively pour out, you will be used up.
Yes.
So it's not like your water just stays in the glass. It's going one way or the other. So I want to be focused, and who you were talking about, wanting to get to a net zero. It's like, it's going to be net zero one way or the other, whether he's alive or after he passes, because he ain't taking none of it with him. Right. So it's like, that's a pour out, not a used up. Yes. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of his days, at the end of his life, he takes the exact same amount with him on. And so he's going to pour it out, and my dad did very, very similar, So I joked the last 10 years of my dad's life, he gave way more money than he ever had, because he said, that's what I want to do. That's the legacy I want to live and leave, and that's the problem too, is it's not just the legacy to leave. It's the legacy that you have the opportunity to live. Yes. And if you are used up, you can leave a legacy used up. Mm-hmm. But if you want to pour out, it's a legacy that you live. And that's what's so important.
You take that understanding, as you just said, and there's two factors that we have to realize as the church is being built, then and now. If I'm to pour out, I also have to be filled up. It's a consistent. I have to come back to God. I have to come back to his word. I have to consistently allow God to fill me up so that I can pour out. The more I pour out, the more empty I am, but the more he fills me up. It's this cooler, analogy. There's a spout at the bottom. Eventually it's going to run dry, but hopefully you're filling the water so the spout keeps going. The other reality is this. You kind of mentioned it, and we'll kind of close with this thought on it. When we go to these places, when we serve other people, even here, Sunday morning, people are pouring themselves out. But we always say this, we go there hopefully so that they benefit and that something in them changes. But we know it reverses itself. Yes. We come back more filled up. Yes, we're exhausted physically. Yes, we're tired from the work that we've done, but we can rest and get through that. But spiritually, emotionally, we are so filled. Our tank has been so filled. We've been thinking, I'll give myself out to all these people, and they have given us something we couldn't imagine that has changed us forever. And we come back, or the story of a Kyle. Hey man, when I set up a sign on Sunday, did you know this first Christian in his family has been bringing them and now leading other people to Jesus? That fills me up to go do it again next week. And that's the reciprocal part of understanding our faith in all of this.
Yeah, when I said this Sunday from the stage, that I come back from these trips completely filled. And that's from going from a trip here or being in a community group here, or trip there or community group here. I go into these expecting the bottom to fall out, expecting my world to crash. And I do that because I expect it, because it happens every time.
Keep the bar low and it'll actually be okay.
That's right. Right. And I've learned to work with it now. But I come back, like you wouldn't believe, just so energized and so on fire and not even filled, but just overflowing from these trips.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because it's that what I talked about at the end of my message yesterday, the kingdom principle, right? It's divine reversal. So it's like the way up is down, you know what I mean? And so it's that mentality of the more we empty, the more he fills. But he won't fill, he has no need to fill something that's already full. So it is, to me, it's the kingdom reversal. It's the divine reversal of all those things that's happening and how that wants to look. And so to me, it's a perfect example. I said, what we talked about today, what Brandon even talked about yesterday, it's like he committed to go on that trip to Germany. And that was a lot for him. I mean, he didn't get into what's going on with his wife and the issues, but I know Tim, we're very close with them, and it's hard. And he does. I mean, I'll say this one thing. So for the most part, he has to open every water bottle in that house. Like that's the type of stuff she walks through. She can't open a simple water bottle. And so for him to be gone to Maine and then turn back around and go for 10 days to Germany and just know, he said, but I got to do this. And what it did, without getting personal with him, but what it did was it allowed other people to step in, and it allowed his wife to grow and to do things that she didn't think she could do because she was forced to do them. And so that he mentioned it a little bit in the layers he talked about at the end, but you just get to see it firsthand, but that's what it is. It's pouring yourself out, but it's filling yourself up first. And that's where, you got to stay in the word. You got to stay in church. You got to stay around people that fill you up and not bleed you dry,
I said a few weeks ago, someone told me before we ever started Genesis, Tim, build the type of church you would want to attend. And obviously, we don't build the church, Christ does. But he was saying, if you're going to put your heart and soul into this, make it about something that you would want to be a part of, whether you were the leader of it or not. And I can tell you time and time again, it has funneled me into Philippians chapter 2. I want to be a part of a space and a place with people who put the interests of others about themselves, that will consistently pour themselves out and be shining lights in a wicked and crooked generation. And I get to experience that. And for those that have been with us today, the people at this table, you guys hear us all the time, Chad and I, since 5th grade, we've gotten to walk this out in our life, in our marriages, in our homes. But it was poured into us by somebody else. Tamara's here today, and I did not know you from,
No.
I had no idea who you were when you showed up with your family that first Sunday. Now we're about to celebrate 16 years, and I would tell anybody here, you want to go to Brazil and you can't get on a trip with Genesis, just ask her. Let her take you. I trust her that much, and I have seen her put this into play. And that is not what she ultimately aspired to do. That's not in her career path. That's not in what she thought as a mom. But now 30 trips in, this is a piece of your life.
Absolutely.
And now, because you have poured yourself out, you can pour into others and say, come with me and be a part of this. And that's the beauty of the church here today. And so I'm thankful for both of you being here. Any last words or comments or anything like that?
I would just say, like you said, come on the trip with me. I'll take you. I will absolutely change your perspective. And then we'll come back and do it here in Orlando.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So here's the deal, everybody. 5 episodes left in 2025, and season 3 is at its end. Hard to believe it's been 3 seasons, which is crazy in and of itself. But we have 5 episodes left this year on the letters that built the church. Next week, Philippians chapter 3. We'll close it out here at the end of the month, chapter 4. And then we have just a few weeks left in December as Christmas kind of shows up here. But today was this. Here is what it says in Philippians chapter 2. But here's how we're walking it out. And you can do the exact same thing. And so maybe you've never been anywhere in any of this. And as Chad said, it's not a passport, it's a posture. Where can I start? Right here. How can I get involved in my church, in my city, serving, so I'm pouring out? And then what happens when I take that step? Maybe you become like Tamara. Maybe 30 trips in, you never imagined your life would be like that. But it's not just changed you. You're changing other lives in the process. And that's what Philippians 2 is all about as the church is being built. And that's what we want to be about here as well. And so to all of you that have been watching, all of you that have been with us, all the 2 of you that will watch and listen to this later, I hope that this not only helps you see things, but it helps you walk this out to know you can be lights in a dark and wicked generation around us. And so to all of you, thanks for being with us. Till next week, grace and peace.